Dr. Fauci, in 2022, you had a taxpayer-funded salary of $480,000 a year. You were, in fact, the highest paid federal employee in the entire federal government, even making more than the NIH director and the President of the United States.
What happens when one of America's most recognizable health officials refuses to answer the toughest questions under oath? That's exactly what unfolded as Dr. Anthony Fauci faced explosive accusations about taxpayer funding, gain-of-function research, and the COVID-19 response. But instead of giving direct answers, he repeatedly invoked the Fifth Amendment. Watch what happened.
Dr. Fauci, in 2022, you had a taxpayer-funded salary of $480,000 a year. You were, in fact, the highest paid federal employee in the entire federal government, even making more than the NIH director and the President of the United States. According to now public documents, that was due in large part to your work on biodefense. Unreported is how NIAID spent over $1 billion from 2009 to 2026 in biodefense and influenza federal contracts and subcontracts. My office uncovered records on usaspending.gov that show from 2015 to 2020, NIAID paid out $515,418 in subcontracts to Harbin Veterinary Institute in Harbin, China, including $100,000 a few days after it opened a BSL-4 biolab in 2018. That very same institute was criticized for doing gain-of-function bird flu research in 2013. And yet you were funding them for years after that, sending U.S. taxpayer dollars to China. These contracts, which we also trace to NIAID, show U.S. taxpayers funded gain-of-function researchers in the Netherlands and in Wisconsin, funding the same folks whose controversial work led President Obama to pause this exact type of dangerous pandemic research. Dr. Fauci, did you know that the NIH's billion-dollar Sears contract programs were funding gain-of-function researchers in China, the U.S., and in the Netherlands?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Dr. Fauci, Dr. Deborah Birx wrote in her book that you and President Obama's former CDC director were at a Saturday, March 14th, 2020 meeting at her home 2 days before the president announced his 15 days to slow the spread effort. Your now released diary said the meeting was a week before that. Dr. Birx said you all were trying to trap the president into having no other options. She wrote, your plan was to, quote, block any of the president's escape routes. So, quote, he'd have no choice but to agree to our flatten the curve measures. Yes or no, Dr. Fauci, did you try to block or trap President Trump into the slow the spread, flatten the curve measures in March 2020?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
The hearing quickly turned into one of the most intense exchanges of the day. A lawmaker confronted Dr. Anthony Fauci over claims that the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases funded research tied to gain-of-function projects in China, the Netherlands, and Wisconsin using U.S. taxpayer money. The questions also focused on contracts connected to the Harbin Veterinary Institute in China and whether Fauci knew those programs were supporting controversial research. But before answering, Fauci repeatedly said that, on the advice of counsel, he was exercising his Fifth Amendment rights. The questioning didn't stop there. The lawmaker then brought up Dr. Deborah Birx's book, asking whether Fauci and other health officials tried to influence President Donald Trump into adopting the 15 days to slow the spread strategy by leaving him with no other option. Once again, Fauci declined to answer, citing the Fifth Amendment. Those moments immediately sparked debate, with supporters arguing he was following legal advice, while critics said the refusal to answer would only raise more questions. What do you think? Was invoking the Fifth Amendment the right legal move, or does it leave too many questions unanswered?